This was not somebody that was just, oh, I like cars. I mean, his life was cars. He just had this mechanical genius mind. I remember so vividly getting up on a Saturday morning when the house was just shaking loud. I'd go downstairs and open the garage door, and my father would be hunched over like a 41 Willys gasser with open headers on it, and he's got his stethoscope, this hot rod that's shaking the neighborhood. Grew up in Appalachian poverty. His father was killed when he was young, when he was 3 years old. His mother worked in a really awful sweatshop 6 days a week to support 2 children as a widow. He got his first job when he was 11 to help put food on the table. He graduated from high school at 16, went to Virginia Tech to take an entrance exam, where the fellow from the admissions office told him, "Look, son, you are not Virginia Tech material. You will never make it here." But my dad said, "Yes, but you have to take me. I graduated from Virginia High School." And he said, "I know you. We have to take you, but you're never going to make it." So fast forward 5 years, and my father graduated #1 in his class with a master's in mechanical engineering. He was recruited by General Motors within a week of graduating. My father started restoring another Corvette that he owned, which was a 1969 small block numbers matching coupe. He spent about probably 12 to 14 years working on this car, doing a full body off restoration that was immaculate. His intention was to do the 61 also, the car that I own, but just literally never had time to do it. The car came into the family in the mid-'70s. I think he spent a whopping $1,600 on the purchase. About 4 years ago, he and my mom decided to downsize their house, and they left Detroit. And when he did, he asked me, he said, "Do you want to come get this car?" So we brought the car here. I kept the car in my garage for about a year and a half. My wife and I had an agreement from decades ago when we first got married that I would not do any hot rods of any kind until all the kids were out of school, out of college, and married. My father's health was starting to get a little shaky. My parents' health was getting weaker. And she said, if we are going to do this thing, we ought to do it while your father's alive so he can see it. We wanted to build a tribute to my father's career, 44 years working for General Motors. Once we got into the build, we kept discovering things. And the more we discovered, the more we realized how deep and how detailed this build was going to be. I think Earl and I had joked that if there was a prosecution for abusing an automobile, whoever owned it before my father owned it would have been prosecuted to the highest extent of the law. There was a point where my wife and I said, do we keep going? I think that once we passed the point of spending what we could have bought a new Corvette for, that's when she said, okay. But, at a certain point, you just have to keep going. As his health started to wane, we realized that, this wasn't going to go on forever, that we had a limited amount of time. We ended up with an engine issue literally the day before he was supposed to get here. And Earl and his crew pulled the car in the shop here, and they did a full bottom-end rebuild of that engine, working all night. They worked straight through the night, into the morning. I came down to pick up the car about an hour before my father got to Atlanta, fired it up, and drove it home. In fact, the engine was still warm when he got there. He walked into the garage, and he just stopped. He looked at that car, he shook his head, and all he said was, "I can't believe it. I can't believe it." He's 3 times. "I can't believe this is the same car." And I was on one side of the car, and my son was standing on the other side of the car, and he had his little boy with him. And so there were 4 generations of Stevars looking at that car. So my son and his little boy stayed over, so we decided to have a one-car show. So we pulled the car out on a nice sunny Saturday afternoon and parked it in the driveway and just sat there and had the most lovely 2 or 3 hours just chatting about the car, about life. We took 2 or 3 drives in the car, maybe a half hour to an hour each. It's a robust car. It's very high-strung. It's got a lot of horsepower and it wants to run. My dad loved that. He just couldn't get enough of the way it sounded. And that was the last time we really spent cogent time together. You know, he passed about 3 months later. There were times I'm driving the car and I just kind of get overwhelmed by the emotions of it. The first car show we showed it in earlier this year, I had a fellow come and make a really substantial offer to buy the car. And I told him, you know, about what it meant and that it wasn't for sale. And he came back about a half hour later and said, "Are you sure? I've got cash." And I said, "No, I really don't want to sell it." And about a half hour later, he came back again and said, "Are you sure? Because I'll buy this car right now." But it isn't about the money. It isn't about anything else. It's about what the car represents.